10:21 is the time. Need to know with Jeff Angelo is the program. The Department of Homeland Security is quietly broadening its efforts to curb speech that it considers dangerous. That's according to an investigation by the website The Intercept. And look, this is a broad attempt by your government to control what you read, what you hear. Let's talk this over with the Senior Tech and Innovation Policy Analyst at Americans for Prosperity. James Czerniawski is on my Newsmaker line. James, welcome to Iowa Radio. Good morning to you.
Thank you. Good morning to you, too.
So, James, I'm sure you have looked over this Intercept report as I have. What were some of the eye-opening things about it for you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're somebody who works in this space a lot, it wasn't too eye-opening. The government wanted to control a narrative. Whoa, what a surprise, right? I think when you're looking over this report, it's just more alarming to see more like the breadth in terms of, how often they were going and trying to set up cadence with some of these social media companies, expanding the topics from anything as simple as like COVID to looking at like the war in Afghanistan and other major policy topics of public interest. All of those things are very surprising because those are all very big topics where there needs to be like a good, healthy discussion, undoubtedly, and it just doesn't seem right that the government's trying to put its thumb on the scale here in terms of what that discourse looks like online. So it's highly alarming, to say the least.
Yeah. So, James, obviously we heard over and over again when we start talking about, and of course this is really coming to light with Elon Musk taking over Twitter, throttling of some accounts, shadow banning some accounts, obviously just branding some information, misinformation that wasn't, taking other accounts off. But we're always told, hey, it's a private company. They can do whatever they want. So, is that still really the rule here, that even if they're bowing to government pressure, they're still just a private company and this is just the world we live in now? What do you think?
Well, no, I certainly think that they are still private companies and they do broadly have the right to go and decide what is and is not on their platform. They still have an interest there. I think the bigger problem is more so, again, to your point and to our conversation here, when the government decides to go and insert itself into this conversation. And there's some degree of reason, where it's okay, you have a public health emergency, so the government wants to make sure that people have access to authoritative information. All right, I can see that, but that's not necessarily what was always happening there, right? If you're going and flagging an account with 36 followers because of election integrity issues, that's self-identifying as a parody account, is that really such a threat? Or, a Fauci parody account, is that really a threat to COVID misinformation? And, the problem with misinformation is that it's so malleable in nature. It's information that we think is inaccurate at that point in time. It certainly is an issue. But, if we're looking at it in the context of COVID, what we knew at the start of the pandemic versus what we knew 1 year later versus what we know now are all very different circumstances. So to label something misinformation, I think, it can present some problematic things. I'm not sure that we want the government going and having a heavy-handed role in throwing those labels around.
So, James, I think that the Republicans will take over the House next week, and then they'll start doing some investigations. And I feel like this is going to be a thing that folks like Ted Cruz are going to make a big deal of because, Ted Cruz loves social media, loves being on Twitter. But in the end, is there anything illegal or wrong being done, or is it just conversations like this? As long as we're just pointing out to the public we've done our job and they're aware of it, or is there really something illegal or wrong being done here?
Yeah, so that's the question, and I think that the legal situation is murky because what the claims are in the lawsuit, let's say from General Schmidt from the state of Missouri, is that this is likening it to state action, and there certainly could be an argument made there, which is why the judge in that case granted discovery so that General Schmidt can go and provide documents like what we saw in the Intercept reporting. But that's a very high bar to go and pass because these companies have the right to say no. And even by that own report's admission, there was one done where it said the rate of government flagged items to action being taken was approximately around 35%. Now, maybe somebody could argue that that's 35% too much, but at the end of the day, these companies still have the option to say no, and broadly speaking, it seems like they did. So proving state actor might be hard. When it comes to what Congress can do, I do think that, exercising that oversight authority is actually a really important way of either A, dropping the government officials to make sure that they're not going and doing something, and B, also setting expectations in a different capacity for, how the government should be interacting with the private sector, because right now it just feels like there's a certain lack of respect for the boundaries between what the government is responsible for doing and what the private sector should be doing as a result of that.
Yeah.
So you can certainly go and expect to see a lot of oversight. I don't doubt that in any stretch of the imagination. And then maybe even possibly some legislation that tries to go and restrict what government actors and government agents can go and do when it comes to their communications with these private companies.
James Czerniawski is a tech expert and a good voice on this particular topic. James, thanks very much for talking with me today.